Do you sometimes feel angry that you have lost the woman whom you married?
There is sometimes anger there because I feel she's missing so much of what I'm doing and and enjoying, whereas she's lacking in that enjoyment,
With 140 million records sold and a signature mustache he's kept for 6 decades, Engelbert Humperdinck is more than just a name. He is one of the last surviving pieces of a golden era of music. Yet, the man who once stood at the absolute pinnacle of fame has now chosen to retreat into the quiet solitude of a widower. This stark contrast begs a haunting question. What happened to the man who once had it all? And why is his upcoming tour the final curtain call for a legend? Take the next 20 minutes to reflect on a life of love and the true cost of immortality. To decode this extraordinary journey, let's go back to his childhood days, where destiny planted the very first seeds for a legend who would alter the course of music history. The boy from India and a destined name. On May 2, 1936, Arnold George Dorsey was born in Madras, India, under the British Empire. No one in that modest home could have imagined he would one day become Engelbert Humperdinck, the singer who knocked the Beatles off the charts. Family lore says a fortune teller once made 3 predictions about him. He would live under another name. He would love one woman for life. And his voice would last until his hair turned white. All 3 came true. But his dream nearly ended before it began. As a young man, Arnold contracted tuberculosis, a disease that almost destroyed his lungs and his voice. After a long recovery, he tried to break into show business under his real name, then as Jerry Dorsey. For nearly 10 years, nothing worked. Then he met Gordon Mills, the manager of Tom Jones. Mills heard the voice, but knew the name had to change. His suggestion sounded impossible. Engelbert Humperdinck. It was strange, old-fashioned, and almost unpronounceable. But that name would turn Arnold Dorsey into a legend. The night he stopped the Beatles in 1967, Engelbert Humperdinck released Release Me under his new name. At first, nothing happened. Radio stations ignored it. Record stores barely touched it. For 3 months, the song was practically dead. Then came one night at the London Palladium. Engelbert performed Release Me on one of Britain's biggest TV shows. By the next morning, record stores were overwhelmed. 80,000 copies were ordered in a single day. Soon, that number climbed to 127,000 a day. The song nobody wanted became a national obsession. Release Me stayed at #1 in the UK for 6 weeks, blocking the Beatles' Penny Lane and Strawberry Fields Forever from the top spot. John Lennon later said they were not upset. The Beatles already had plenty of #1s. Engelbert simply arrived at the perfect moment. Around the same time, Patricia Healy told him his mustache made him look romantic and dangerously handsome. Engelbert promised he would keep it forever. Nearly 60 years later, he still has. His team quickly took him to America. After appearing on The Ed Sullivan Show, he won over U.S. audiences just as fast. Release Me reached #4 on the Billboard Hot 100, launching a career that would sell more than 140 million records. In Las Vegas, he met Elvis Presley. Engelbert asked permission to cover Elvis's songs. Elvis surprised him by saying he was already singing Engelbert's songs too. Later, Elvis recorded Release Me himself. But fame also came with near misses. Strangers in the Night went to Frank Sinatra. Can't Smile Without You became Barry Manilow's hit. Engelbert stayed gracious. On stage, he was the king of romance. But behind the curtain, 3 battles were waiting. One of them would nearly take away his own name. 3 battles in the shadows. The first battle came from Germany. The family of the original Engelbert Humperdinck, the composer of Hansel and Gretel, sued him for using their ancestor's name. German courts sided with the family, and for years he could not perform under the name that made him famous in one of Europe's biggest music markets. But Engelbert eventually came back. With producer Jack White, he released Traum mit Engelbert. The album went straight to #1 in Germany. In the country that once rejected his name, he had reclaimed the top spot. The second battle was more personal. Tom Jones. Both men shared the same manager, Gordon Mills. On paper, it looked perfect. In reality, it created tension. They competed for the same audience, the same songs, and the same TV spots. Rumors claimed Mills favored Tom Jones, while Engelbert stayed silent. Their biggest dispute was "Release Me." Tom Jones said it was offered to him first. Engelbert denied it completely. Decades later, the story remains unresolved. The third battle came in 1973, on a flight to Australia. Mid-air, the plane suffered a terrifying mechanical failure. As it shook violently, Engelbert thought he might die. In that moment, fame meant nothing. He wrote a note to Patricia, not as a superstar, but as a husband who suddenly understood what mattered most. That flight changed him. He realized money, charts, and applause could disappear in seconds. Love was the only thing he wanted to hold on to. But that terrifying night was only the beginning. Fate still had far crueler tests waiting for him. The price of fame. Before he became Engelbert Humperdinck, Arnold Dorsey once came painfully close to changing his life. In the 1960s, he won a football betting pool worth £33,000, nearly £800,000 today. But to claim it, he had to mail the winning ticket. He and his wife were so broke, they could not even afford a stamp. The ticket expired on the table. A fortune vanished over 2 pence. Years later, Engelbert still spoke about it with bitterness. That missing stamp became the perfect symbol of his early life. Always one step away from everything. After Release Me, the money finally arrived. He bought the famous Pink Palace in Bel Air, a 30-room mansion once owned by Jane Mansfield. But the house carried dark rumors after Mansfield's fatal crash, and some believed it brought bad luck to everyone who lived there. Then came the financial troubles. In 2001, Engelbert Humperdinck Tours 2001 Limited collapsed with more than £262,000 in debt, leaving nearly 20 suppliers unpaid. Engelbert had resigned as director just 29 days after the company was formed, but his name was still on it. The British press turned against him, accusing him of walking away while small businesses suffered. In 2003, another legal fight damaged him even more. Engelbert sued producer Darrell Payne over the rights to a 1995 Royal Albert Hall concert. The case dragged on for years, until a Los Angeles judge ruled against him and called the lawsuit frivolous. Then came the most embarrassing detail. Engelbert admitted he did not even know who owned the concert rights. The court later found the lawsuit was being funded by someone else with a personal vendetta. Engelbert had become a weapon in another man's war. For him, the deepest wound was not money, it was honor. The romantic crooner was now being seen as an aging star trapped in lawsuits and controversy. Money can return, a reputation can be repaired. But one thing, once lost, never truly comes back. And Engelbert was facing it every day inside his own bedroom. The price of love. Before Engelbert Humperdinck ever became a legend, there was Patricia Healy. They met in the early 1960s when he was still Jerry Dorsey, a struggling singer nobody wanted to play on the radio. Patricia was a young actress, beautiful, loyal, and deeply in love with the man behind the dream. They married in 1964. She did not marry a superstar. She married a nobody and stayed for 56 years. For 6 decades, Engelbert carried a handwritten letter from Patricia in his wallet. The paper faded. The ink nearly disappeared. But he kept it with him on every tour, even on the 1973 flight he thought might be his last. Years later, when Las Vegas offered him a massive residency, he turned it down. He said he had a gut feeling he needed to be with his wife. Around 2007, Patricia was diagnosed with Alzheimer's. For the next decade, Engelbert watched the woman he loved slowly disappear. She was still alive, but her memories were fading one by one. He kept it private for years. Then, in 2017, he finally spoke out to raise awareness. His life changed completely. He refused to tour for more than 4 days at a time. A care team came to their home every day. But as he once admitted, no one could love Patricia for him. The hardest moments came on stage. He would sing love songs to strangers while thinking of the wife at home who no longer recognized him. Some nights, he broke down mid-song and had to force himself to continue. In 2017, he released The Man I Want to Be, a love letter to Patricia. He played it for her in their bedroom, even when she no longer reacted. It was the only way he knew how to reach her. In January 2021, illness entered their home during the pandemic. Engelbert begged fans online to pray, but Patricia passed away on February 6, 2021, at age 85. The man who once shared stages with Elvis and Dean Martin was now a lonely widower in a quiet Southern California estate. Many thought his story was over. They were wrong. At 85, Engelbert Humperdinck was about to do something no one expected. The legend who refused to fade. After Patricia passed away, Engelbert picked up a new habit that he kept almost completely secret. Every single day, he wrote in a journal. But this wasn't an ordinary diary. Every single entry was a letter to Patricia. The notebook grew thicker by the week, by the month like an ongoing conversation that had never truly ended. There was another promise Engelbert made before Patricia died. He never shared the specific details of how it happened, only revealing the promise itself in an interview years later. He promised her he would sing until his very last breath. That is the real reason he has consistently refused to retire. Not for the money, not for the fame, but because of a vow made in a bedroom to a woman who no longer recognized him. To truly understand Engelbert's late-in-life resurgence, we have to go back to a bitter moment in 2012. At the time, he was 76 years old. The United Kingdom chose him to represent the nation at the Eurovision Song Contest in Baku, Azerbaijan. He performed the song Love Will Set You Free. The result was a PR disaster. Engelbert finished 25th out of 26 contestants, scoring a meager 12 points. Sweden won with 372 points. Bookmaker William Hill immediately offered 25-1 odds that the UK would withdraw from Eurovision the following year. The news dominated the British tabloids for weeks. Engelbert's reaction surprised many. He didn't apologize. He didn't offer excuses. In subsequent interviews, he actually called Eurovision one of the highlights of his life. For a man who had survived tuberculosis, being banned from using his own name in Germany, bankruptcy, lawsuits, and the slow loss of his wife, a failure on a stage was no longer something that could scare him. At 89, Engelbert still hits the gym 4 times a week. His body aches the way any 90-year-old's body would. But he still gets up on stage, he still sings, and he still keeps his vocal cords in good enough shape to power through full-length shows. There's a small ritual he keeps every morning. He drinks a specific type of tea, brewed exactly the way Patricia made it for him for decades. He hasn't changed a thing. The same leaves, the same brewing method, the exact same mug. Once, a doctor suggested he get plastic surgery to maintain his stage image. His response was summed up in a single sentence. He said that Patricia loved his face, and he was going to keep it just the way it was until he saw her again. He still lives in that Southern California estate. It's the very place where he cared for Patricia in her final years. He refuses to move. When asked why, he admitted that moving out would feel like abandoning her. He also genuinely believes that Patricia still visits him through dreams, through subtle signs in the garden, and sometimes through a flower blooming completely out of season. But while he was living a quiet life inside that house, something incredibly unexpected was happening out in the world. His song, A Man Without Love, originally released in the late 1960s, suddenly blew up after being featured in Marvel's Moon Knight and Netflix's The Umbrella Academy. An entire generation who had never even heard the name Engelbert Humperdinck started searching for the track on TikTok. Streaming numbers surged into the millions. Fan-made video edits flooded social media. The legend who was once banned from using his name in Germany and Humiliated at Eurovision had officially become a viral sensation for Gen Z. Meanwhile, the man behind the song was just sitting in Southern California, writing another journal entry to his wife. In April 2026, from Sydney, Australia, Engelbert announced a new tour. He called it the Celebration Tour. In the press release, he deliberately used the word likely when stating it might be his last. He had already tried retiring once before with a tour called The Last Waltz, only to return to the stage because he couldn't bear the absence of it. This time, he made it clear. This wasn't just his career, it was his life. Right on May 2nd, 2026, his 90th birthday, Engelbert released a new single titled I Got You. In interviews, he finally revealed the truth about the track. It wasn't a new composition. It was a song he had written for Patricia some 30 years ago. He had never released it, feeling at the time that it was just too personal. But now, he wanted the whole world to hear his final love letter to her. During one night of his Sydney tour, a moment unfolded that brought the entire arena to a standstill. An American woman who had been following him since 1968, 58 years straight, brought her very first concert ticket with her. The ticket was yellowed, its edges frayed. When she approached the stage and handed it to Engelbert, they both broke down in tears. 60 years of a career, perfectly encapsulated in a single embrace between a legend and a fan who had waited a lifetime. In the final nights of the tour, the sight of Engelbert on stage began to feel less like a concert and more like a sacred ritual. Alone under a warm yellow spotlight, an old microphone. Tucked inside his vest pocket was Patricia's letter, the exact same letter from the 1960s. He sang the final notes of Release Me. The song that had stopped the Beatles in their tracks nearly 60 years ago had now softened into a whisper. There is one final detail he has had planned for a long time. Engelbert has already arranged his final resting place right next to Patricia. He has also chosen the song he wants played at his own funeral. It's a lullaby that Patricia used to sing to him whenever he came home exhausted from touring. 140 million records sold. Beating the Beatles. Singing with Elvis Presley. But if you were to ask Engelbert Humperdinck what his greatest achievement in life is, he wouldn't mention a single one of those things. He would simply smile, place his hand over his heart right where he keeps that old letter, and tell you that he loved one woman for his entire life. That is perhaps the one record no one will ever break. If this story reminded you of someone who loved you unconditionally, leave their name in the comments section below so we can honor them together. Tell us whether you'd rather see Engelbert finally retire or keep singing until his very last breath. We'd love to hear your thoughts. Don't forget to hit subscribe and check out the next video waiting for you on the screen.